This story is 100% true, and I'm writing it on here to warn other people and let them know that there's definitely something out there. And to this day, I still don't know what it was, nor have I gone into any woods or forest whatsoever since. If you don't believe me, that's completely fine. Read this as a fun story for your own expense, but for those of you out there with an open mind, or you've seen something yourself, just know you're not alone, and just typing out and remembering this account is causing me to shake with anxiety and fear. First off, I'm a girl and live in North Carolina of the United States. I was 15 at the time of my encounter and was definitely not a believer in anything supernatural, paranormal, or anything of the sort. It happened while I was at a local summer camp. There was absolutely nothing special about that day. No weird lights, people, animals, sounds, nothing. It was just the same camp schedule as I'd grown used to in the past 2 weeks I'd been there. My age group had just finished lunch and was able to persuade our counselor to let us play a game called Scatter down by the lake. It's like a giant hide and seek in the woods. Now we had played this at least 20 times before that day, and nothing weird had happened to any of us. And we all grew up playing in the woods, so it's not like we had an aversion or fear of it. But for some reason that day, when our counsellor shouted scatter, I ran to find a hiding place. It became a whole new ballgame. I had run as far as I could while still being able to see the lake, as were the rules, and had found a huge old uprooted tree that I decided would be the perfect hiding place. So I laid down as close as I could against the ground and waited. I had been there for about 5 minutes when I suddenly heard someone calling my name in a weird, dreamy-like way. It wasn't just any voice, though. It was my mum's. Now me and my mum are extremely close, thick as thieves, so I'd know her voice anywhere, and I would swear on my own grave that it was without a doubt hers. But I knew it couldn't be her. She was about 20 miles away at work, and even if it had actually been her, and she'd come to pick me up early, the voice wasn't coming from the lake. It was coming from further out into the woods beyond the border of the camp. I knew I should have run away from this strange mimic mum voice, but I couldn't. It was almost hypnotic. It messed with my thoughts and made me doubt myself. It could be Mum. What if she's hurt? I have to get to her. All these things were flooding into my mind like someone had broken a dam I didn't know was there, until they finally overwhelmed me and emotions got the better of me. I took off running in the direction the voice was coming from. I ran as far as I could with only this strange voice as my guide. I couldn't have run for more than 5 or 7 minutes when I got to a clearing and the voice suddenly stopped. When I entered the clearing and didn't hear my mum's voice calling me anymore, I could finally think clearly again and started to have little alarm bells go off inside my head. "You idiot! That's not your mum! Run!" But I couldn't run. I didn't know where to run. I had gotten so far away I had lost sight of the lake by the camp and had absolutely no idea where I was. I was completely exhausted to boot, with no other option than to sit and catch my breath, so I did just that. No sooner had I sat down, more warning bells went off in my mind. I quickly did a 360 survey around the clearing and noticed a strange noise. It wasn't the continuation of the voice before. No, it was the distinct sound of chattering teeth, as if someone was cold. Only there was no one else around, and it was the middle of June in North Carolina. There's no way someone could be cold. And that's when I heard it. Leaves and sticks crunch on the edge of the small clearing, and I realized something was watching me. Then whatever it was moved fast, doing circles around the clearing, almost like it was circling prey. It was at that moment I knew whatever it was had led me out there, away from the rest of my group, exactly like the predator my instincts had been screaming at me that it was. Without any other option than to try and escape, I took off in the direction I thought I had come from, and sprinted as fast as I could, all the while hearing the chattering of teeth and sticks crunching behind me. I didn't know what to do. I didn't dare turn around to see what was chasing me. I knew that if I did, I would slow down. It felt like a lifetime running away from this thing before I finally saw the lake. And even though I didn't think I could, I ran faster than I have ever run in my life. I eventually broke the tree line and ran to the lake where I knew my friends were. At that point, I felt safe enough to stop and look back and see just what had been chasing me, but when I did, I only saw a fleeting form running back the way I had come and the distinct sound of chattering teeth. When I finally found my counsellor, who was the seeker to find all of us, I was hysterical with fear and hugged her as tight as I could. When I finally calmed down, she tried to get me to tell her what happened, but I just asked, "Were you calling my name?" Before she even said anything, I already knew the answer. After all, it had been my mum's voice that led me away from everyone else, but what she replied with was so much more bone-chilling to me. She told me, "No one called for you. We didn't know you were gone. Everyone is still hiding. The game isn't over yet." Well, after all my years of supernatural encounters, I am finally making a Reddit account to post my stories. This is my most recent Wendigo encounter in DeWitt County, Texas. January 12th, 2019, around 8 p.m. Now I'm going to be honest, I chose to go out on this particular night. Town was having a little ghost tour at the haunted hospital. I was lonely and wanted to at least see others having fun. It was 8 p.m. when I left the house and planned to be back within an hour. I have a routine of circling my town in the evening because I just like patrolling, and there's always things creeping about after nightfall. I made my way to the haunted hospital, and once I got there I saw flashlights inside the windows and heard laughter. That's nice, I thought. Seeing others have fun made me smile and got rid of some of the loneliness I was feeling. This was the halfway point of my walk, and I started my second half heading home now. There were some woods on the opposite side of town, but nothing impressive, until I got to the last quarter of my walk. Now I was passing the baseball field on my left, with a large wheat field on my right. This wheat field used to be a large extension of the woods, but was cleared out for growing wheat. I continued again and crossed the small bridge that went over a creek and past another section of the woods. I was now headed towards an old metal building that has recently been turned into a place for making gates and fences. It was about 9 p.m. now. This building had two small white houses beside it and a stretch of dirt road wrapping around the back side of it before returning to normal asphalt road. Now at night this place seems pretty scary. This was one of my favourite places to hang out at night, and it is a normal path I take my walks through. As I was coming up to the dirt road, I saw a very tall, 8'10", pale figure with lanky arms, almost dragging on the ground. It's about 40 feet ahead of me, briskly walking from the white houses to the woods. I stopped walking. What was that? I thought. Its size confused me so much that I had forgotten my previous encounters with a smaller version of it. After a few minutes of standing there, I convinced myself to continue walking. I mean, I was an adventurous person, and there's no way I was just going to turn tail and go home when I just saw something so odd and out of place. Not even 15 seconds into walking forward, this sudden heavy sense of dread overcame me like a giant weight crashing down on my shoulders. My instincts were telling me something was really, really wrong. I turned my iPhone light on and shined it at the woods. Nothing. I kept walking while keeping my head on a swivel, looking in all directions to keep my surroundings in check. About the 5th or 6th time I looked at the woods, I saw it. A huge, bleached, white, humanoid figure crouched on all fours. It was easily still 5-6 feet tall, even though it was bent over. Its black eyes paralyzed me. It had a big, round, bald head, an extremely emaciated body, void of all hair, with very long, almost dislocated-looking arms and legs. Its legs were like a flamingo bird's at the knee, as it bent backwards instead of forwards. I took all this in a matter of seconds. Suddenly it reminded me of a praying mantis, when it swayed back and forth while staring as if deciding whether to attack or not. This broke me out of my trance, and I ran as fast as I could. I didn't look back until I had run a block. Out of breath and scared as heck, I finally took a glance back. I didn't see anything in sight. I didn't hear it chase me either. Maybe it was just stalking those people in those 2 little white houses, and was watching for me to go away to go back to its business. Maybe it didn't want anything to do with me, but that wasn't the end. I got home, took a shower, and turned out the lights before I hopped in bed, when suddenly there was something tapping on my window. Tap, tap, tap. 3 taps and nothing else. I laid in my bed that night wondering whether it had followed me home or not. A string of bad luck ensued the coming weeks. I was constantly burning stuff on the stove that was relatively easy to make, and I was an excellent cook on top of that. My dog started going nuts at night, growling and barking in the living room and at the front door, which she has never ever done. She is the quietest, sweetest dog you'll ever meet. And finally I got deathly sick for 3 weeks straight with no sure sign of what I had gotten. 103 fever, vomiting with blood, diarrhea with blood, sneezing, coughing, sore throat, migraines, nerve spasms, stuffy and dry nose. It changed constantly. Severe stomach aches, aching all over, especially in my bones. Other lesser entities taking advantage of my state, trying to latch onto me, and slight insomnia. I've had smaller strings of bad luck before, after hearing its mimicry, trying to lure me into the forest, or seeing it one other time, but I didn't see any details. Nothing ever this extreme. I don't go into the woods alone anymore. A little backstory on the area. The town this took place in is very small. It's in South Dakota, an hour south of where Mount Rushmore is. It's where my grandma, as well as some aunts and uncles and their children live. It is a beautiful place in the Black Hills, seemingly quiet. A place where you would not expect something out of the ordinary. Something so terrifying, something so demonic. It sends shudders through my body just thinking of it. This town is full of wildlife, and a little river runs through it. It even has a waterfall. It has hot springs throughout it. It has some beautiful historic buildings and wonderful people. It all started this one day. The day my cousin, who at the time practiced devil worship and witchcraft, told my mum and my friend who came to South Dakota with us and me about this place. This place, where they would go to partake in such things. He said it was a cool place to walk around, and me being a 15-year-old, I was more than willing to go explore. He did give us a warning though. He looked at us with a deadly seriousness and said, "This is very important. Do not go there at dusk, dawn, or in the dark of the night." This is where you'd think we would listen, but no, why would we do that? That was the moment that life changed. My mum was curious, but she had an uneasy feeling. After eating dinner and cleaning up, we decided to go check it out. Even though there was less than an hour until dusk, the location was only a few minutes away. We all agreed that we had plenty of daytime left, we thought. It is such a small town it would take less than 5 minutes to get there, and since most of the town is quiet at this point of the night, we decided it would be a perfect time to just go and check it out. Just for a few minutes. We left the safety of my grandma's house and got into my mum's beautiful blue Ford Mustang. She drove. Presumably we listened to one of the random bits of music on our favourite CD. Each of us silently reflected on the warning from my cousin and the possible impending outcome. Still, we were upbeat and ready for an adventure. But not the one that followed. That is for sure. Now I am a very sensitive person in the ways of almost a sixth sense. I have always had some kind of feelings when something isn't right, almost a warning. As we pulled up to this field, it had an eerie feel to it. Mum turned off the car and we got out. The moment I got out of the back of the Mustang, I heard the most unnatural cackling. At that very moment I became extremely uneasy. Thinking of it now, 15 years later, I have goosebumps. Trees speckled the area of interest and became more dense at the edge. It was as if they created a protective rim. There was a gazebo in the centre, and some other ramshackle buildings here and there. I noticed that the sun was just above the horizon. But did we stop? No. But we should have. We walked away from the safety of our car and further into this little field. My mum was, secretly, in extreme protection mode. If anything threatened my friend or me, she was prepared to die protecting us. We wandered around, and honestly it seemed like nothing was going to go wrong. It was so very eerie. Except for the cackling, I hadn't noticed anything else. So, by this point, it had been about 10 minutes of walking around, and the sun was starting to go down. It was a stunning sunset, as it usually is. Quite settling. My mum hadn't noticed that the sun was on the horizon. We explored a fair amount. At the same time, my mum and I realized that the sun had set. We decided that it was time to get back to the car and head home to my grandma's. My friend wasn't ready to leave. I could tell that my mum sensed something. I thought about my cousin's warning. Do not go there at dusk or dawn or in the dark of the night. With a sense of urgency, my mum said, "It is time to go, now." My friend still didn't get the seriousness of the situation. He knew that there was no point in arguing. Quickly we piled in, got situated, turned the car around and headed back down the hill towards town. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled. I felt like there was something behind us. I turned around. I was right. It was a terrifying monstrosity. It was the thing of nightmares, and it was chasing us. The downhill road was very narrow and curvy. We were going around 30 miles per hour. The beast was keeping pace behind us. The streets were empty. It was as if it were the wee hours of the morning. I lost sight of the beast. I wondered if it had given up. Instinctively, I knew it was still close. My mum glanced out of her window. I knew where the thing had gone. With a sharp, commanding voice, my mum ordered, "You need to leave us alone. You are not wanted or needed. You will not harm any of us or our family that lives here. Now get back to your realm." I had never heard my mum speak so firmly, with an unmistakable warning of doom if her words were not followed. The monster had the head of a buffalo, the torso of a man, and the lower half of a deer. I would describe it as a beast man from the Warhammer universe. It was around 9 feet tall. Its eyes were as black as a deep cave, but there was a flame flickering deep inside them. It was a flame that could steal your soul. As we turned onto the main road, it disappeared. We agreed to not tell anyone else of our encounter with the beast from hell. The story does not end there. We arrived back at my grandma's house, shaken to the core, but safe. We got ready for bed and got settled in. My friend and I slept in the living room by the wall. Outside there was a pretty tall chain-link fence, maybe 5 feet or so, to keep the local deer off of our porch where they liked to snack on my grandma's flowers. This is an important little fact because it worked for the deer. My mum was sleeping in the room not that far away from me, and my grandma was in her room on the other side of the house. So we went to sleep. Everything was fine. Or so we thought. At some point, I am not sure of the time, but it was some time past midnight, I woke up to the sounds of hooves pacing from left to right, back to the left and back to the right, over and over. It scared me so bad. It didn't take long before I'd had enough, and as I got up, I saw the shadow through the curtains. Nope, that was enough for me to get up and run to sleep next to my mum. My friend joined to sleep on the floor. From this room we heard the beast ram itself into the side of the house. At some point, sleep overshadowed the terror. That was one of the longest nights of my life. The sunrise was such a blessing that morning. We had survived with it outside. To this day I have not gone back to that area, and it still haunts my dreams. When someone says don't go somewhere after dark, don't. Just take my word and don't. I know that thing has followed me back to where I live on the west coast. I have seen it lurking, watching, waiting for the perfect time. The most recent sighting for me was just over a year ago. It's still watching me. I don't spend time looking outside at night anymore, or walking around there after the last time I saw it. This is a real story that happened to me. To some of you, it may be a bit disturbing, utterly weird, or you may just think it's fake. But if you somehow then please tell me what I can do, or leave tips by leaving a message on this post. I was about 10 when it first showed itself to me and made its presence clear. I was a very lonely kid and often suicidal. I had no friends and no one to talk to. I was an easy target for bullies, and I thought that being bullied every day was normal and okay. Because I was always so lonely, I created an imaginary friend. It wasn't a boy, nor was it a girl. It was gender neutral, I guess. It was definitely a person, but I don't remember what they looked like. But from some pictures that I had drawn, they had straight shoulder-length hair. What was weird was the fact that I had never drawn a face on this thing, but it didn't bother me that much. I had something to talk to, someone to walk home with, someone who understood and knew everything about me. It knew what I hated and what I liked, and it never left me. Not like the others. The people who pretended to care. I hate people like that. They always try to understand but never do, and then they end up leaving you with information about yourself that they can now tell whoever they want. I've had this friend for 2 years and suddenly forgot them, and they've somehow vanished from my life. I felt lost and lonely. I had to fight through the bullying all alone. I made so many suicide attempts that I cannot even count them anymore. I still have marks till this very day. They haunt me. It was winter. I woke up to thunder and looked up at my white ceiling. It was raining as well. I liked storms. They calmed me down and helped a lot when I wanted to sleep. I look at the end of my waterbed. At first I didn't notice anything, but when my eyes got used to the dark, I could make out a tall black shadow looking at me from the end of my bed. I was frozen into place. I couldn't move, couldn't talk. It started getting colder and colder in my room, which was weird because I had the heater in my room on and all the windows and doors were shut and locked. It stared at me for what felt like hours of pure, unsettling silence. Then it talked to me in this deep, low, rusty voice. "Hey, there's food ready for you on the kitchen table. I'd hurry, Mother is waiting for you." Then he walked through the door without even opening it. As soon as he left my room, I jumped out of my bed and ran out of my room. I didn't see it on my way out. When I went to our living room, my mum just got done making dinner, and she was waiting for me with my 2 sisters. This felt so odd. I noticed that the thunder had stopped a long time ago and the sun was shining brightly through our windows. I never understood what really happened. This was many years ago, and I live somewhere else now in a new apartment with my family, and I've seen it at least 3 times throughout the past months. I'll update you if he or she or it appears to me again.